Welcome to my channel. My name is Adina. I'm an intuitive astrologer. In this video, we will be getting into the energy for the full moon we are having in Pisces at 7 degrees, August 30th. 2023. For the first portion of this video, we will get into the general energy of the full moon, and then for the second portion of this video, we will get into all 12 rising signs. Also, keep in mind that once we get into all 12 rising signs, you want to note whether you have any personal planets or points around that 7-degree mark, because that will mean that you will feel this a lot more personally. You can feel this a little bit more intensely, especially if you have any personal planets around that 7-degree point of the mutable signs, which are Gemini, Virgo, Sagittarius, or of course Pisces. If you have personal planets or points in the water signs, Cancer, Scorpio, around that degree mark, you can feel this more positively because it's forming a trine. So you just want to keep that in mind as we go through the horoscopes. Now, if you align with my energy and you enjoy my content, don't forget to subscribe and like this video and hit the post notification bell so that you can get notified every time I upload a new video. So Pisces is a mutable water sign. Pisces is very emotional, receptive, intuitive, creative, imaginative, very spiritual. Now, one thing with Pisces is we can have issues with boundaries. There can be issues with seeing things with rose-colored glasses. There can be issues with discernment. But Pisces is also a very romantic energy as well. And so Pisces, just like every other sign, can be a mixed bag. Now, the interesting thing is that at the time of this full moon, coming into September, we have 6 planets retrograde. And this full moon is also forming a conjunction to Saturn. So we don't have a lot of energy with this full moon as far as forward movement, really implementing anything. This is a time to really sit with the energy and go within. This is a time where you don't really want to be making decisions that need you to be discerning, that need you to, this is even too in feeling intuitively where there can be issues with commitments and responsibilities, because that is that Saturn energy where maybe you are feeling like there is a disconnect. You're feeling as if this is not aligning anymore, but you're being forced to do something. So we definitely want to be mindful of that. Now, we will have Mercury retrograde, and it is Virgo season, and Virgo is ruled by Mercury. This can be difficult when it has to do with, because in Virgo season, this is when we want to get back to our routines. Kids go back to school, but there's something here where it's off. There's something different. There's lack of clarity, lack of direction. And if this is something you're moving through in your own personal life, where you're feeling this stagnant energy from these retrogrades, I find that switching up my home, my furniture, switching up my routine can definitely help. Now, because of that Mercury retrograde. And I also want to mention that this Mercury retrograde is forming a trine to Uranus retrograde, which when Uranus stations, which is only a couple days before this full moon, we can be feeling very anxious. There can be a lot of anxiety. There can be panic attacks. So we really do want to be watching for that as well. And grounding. We need to definitely be trying to get our feet on the earth at this time and drink a lot of water, because this is something we will all be moving through in our own way. Now, I just wanted to mention that before I forgot, because it is Mercury retrograde. Now, going back to if you're moving through some type of stagnant energy, if you're feeling stuck in some sense, because it is something we can move through with retrograde planets, retrograde energy. This is a time where we want to be doing all of those RE words: reflect, reevaluate, redo. This is really a period of reflection. And so we can be tapping into our creativity at this time, tapping into our intuition, tapping into our imagination, and creating something really beautiful and doing a lot of spiritual work. We don't want to be implementing anything. This is really a time of sitting with our energy and reflecting, journaling, and just really feeling what is coming up for you can definitely help you move through this energy. Journal anything that is coming up for you as you sit with yourself, as you sit with the energy, even at night, meditating. This really is the time where we have to be taking care of our energy and really implementing this into our day-to-day life. Because of the sun in Virgo and Mercury retrograde, there's a lot of stress in the air. There's a lot of stress. This is when people can be feeling, like I said, anxious, panicky, stressful. And so that's why I'm really, kind of driving that home, where we have to be grounding. We have to be taking care of our energy and really trying to relax. You can try and move your furniture within your house, within your office. That really helps to bring in some fresh energy. It's almost like an energy reset. I know it helps me. You can try that. And actually, during Virgo season, I usually do that naturally. I'm starting to organize. I'm getting back to routines, implementing new routines, switching my house around. So you can definitely try that if you're feeling like if you're feeling this stuck kind of energy, that can help. Now, with that conjunction to Saturn, we can be feeling resistance. There can be a hold or a stop to something coming up. There can be an energy blockage, which can affect that tapping into your intuition, that tapping into your creativity and imagination. So if you are struggling with that, that may be why. And just really sitting with the energy, and it's really, and that's honestly what I'm feeling the most with this, is that it's just a time of reflection. It's a time of sitting with what is coming up for you. And this can be a time where something may be coming up for you that you can work with and move through to release, to start fresh once you get the go ahead, if that makes sense. Now, also with this Saturn conjunction, we want to watch for commitments, for our responsibilities and our personal boundaries. This can be a time where our personal boundaries are tested, whether it is with others, whether it is experiences or situations that we are moving through. So we want to be mindful of that. Now we also have the other ruler of Pisces, because Pisces is ruled traditionally by Jupiter, modernly by Neptune. Neptune is also retrograde in Pisces. We have Neptune forming a sextile to Pluto in Capricorn. Now Capricorn rules governments, authority, corporations, rules, structures, with Pluto ruling power and control. Pluto is a very intense energy. We can be met with, now we will feel this collectively and individually. So let's approach it first on an individual level. Individually, you may be met with an opportunity or something coming in that you want to make sure you are seeing clearly. This can have to do with, and because Saturn is ruled by, Saturn rules Capricorn as well, and with Pluto in Capricorn, this can be something coming in around your responsibilities, around your commitments, and again, around your boundaries. But you want to know, I also feel with this energy, because Saturn also rules life lessons and karmic energy, there can be something coming in where you are realizing the life lesson that you've learned with a specific journey or theme that you've been moving through, whether it is a relationship or whether it's something that you're moving through at work or with your career. There can be something coming up at this time where you are becoming aware of a specific, and this goes to Venus retrograde as well, unconscious program or belief or program you've been running on unconsciously, and now you're switching that up. You're learning the lesson. You're understanding you've been running on this specific program. You're understanding the specific life lesson as well. So this can be a time of releasing karmic patterns, becoming conscious of karmic patterns, and ending those cycles, releasing those cycles because of that Saturn energy. And because Neptune is forming that sextile to Pluto, there can be an ending. There can be a final realization and transformational period. So something very interesting and something to be mindful of. Now we have Mars at 2 degrees of Libra forming an in conjunction to Saturn. So this can be difficult energy because Mars is really the only planet at this time that is really we're really getting energy from, because it's the only planet that is not retrograde or that is not slowing down to station retrograde. And Mars is in Libra. Mars entered Libra August 27th, or enters, depending on when you're listening to this video, Mars enters Libra August 27th, or already entered Libra. Mars does not do very well in Libra. Mars is at its fall in Libra, and so the only planet that we really have to draw energy from to implement, well, this isn't a time to implement, but to really exert any type of energy, if you get what I'm saying. It's not even at its full capacity because Mars is in Libra. So, and that is why I'm just feeling like, that's why I've been saying it's really just a good time to sit with the energy, to reflect, to journal. But with that in conjunction to Saturn, that is again in conjunctions or something not in balance, something coming up to your awareness that you need to work through consciously, that you need to be aware of. And with Mars being in Libra, the South Node being in Libra, this is something within your life that's not in balance that you're possibly becoming aware of. This can be something coming up for you where, again, around your commitments, around your responsibilities, and you're having the realization that it's no longer in alignment, and understanding that this can possibly be something you need to release and let go of. So quite an interesting energy as well. Now, at the same time of this full moon, we also have Mercury retrograde forming an in conjunction to Chiron retrograde. This is another in conjunction. This is another energy that requires balance, where there's something coming in that is not eye to eye. You're not seeing something eye to eye. There's an imbalance. And with Mercury being communication, information, now collectively we can be from this where collectively and individually, I feel this can be a trigger to old trauma, old wound, old vulnerability, because it is Chiron. Mercury is information. So I do think that we will start to see, which we kind of already are, but I believe September will be a month of really seeing things on the news, media, social media around the last few years, triggering old trauma, triggering old vulnerabilities, old wounds we all have, that we all share individually. This is where something can be triggered for you when it has to do with those old triggers and vulnerabilities of the self, where somebody is saying something to you or you are hearing something that is triggering who you are, your identity in some way. It can be even an ego wound. So something to be mindful of as well with this energy. And one more thing I want to mention before we get into all 12 rising signs is that Jupiter is in Taurus now until May of 2024. Jupiter is the ruler of this full moon, and we still have Jupiter in that square to Venus retrograde. And so we can also hear something now, again, collectively or individually, that has to do with our money, that has to do with our finances, that has to do with our relationships and what we've been moving through with this Venus retrograde energy. So, something can be triggered at this time. Whatever you've been moving through since mid-July or July 22nd when Venus stationed, or even June when Venus entered Leo, is when we would have felt, when Venus entered Leo, when we would have felt the build up to this Venus retrograde journey. Sorry, Mercury retrograde. I'm having a hard time speaking. I apologize. We can be moving through more of that. More of that can be triggered at this time. Whatever has shown up for you over the last couple of months, as far as your relationships, your close personal connections, your self-love, your self-worth, your self-respect, boundaries around that, that can be showing up at this time. There can be more coming to your awareness, more that you have to work through and possibly release and let go, because Venus is now the dispositor of the South Node. So there really is an interesting story at play that can be, again, showing up with this full moon in Pisces. And so my final thoughts on this full moon in Pisces is that we are in trying times. And I never want to push, I never push fear, negativity. I provide these forecasts and inform you about the energy, because I 100% believe that with the awareness, we can move through these energies consciously and effectively. And we are in difficult times at this time with these retrograde planets moving through energy we've never felt before. So we do want to be very conscious of what is showing up for us. We want to be taking care of our energy at this time, where Pisces is a very beautiful energy to be working with spiritually and intuitively and creatively. Not a time to implement, not a time to move forward. This is a time to reflect. This is a time to sit with the energy, feel what is coming up for you, because Pisces is a mutable sign. We can be wanting to change, where one minute we're feeling this way, the next minute we're feeling a different way. There's a lot of emotions. There's a lot of heightened emotions. And with that Saturn energy, there can be a lot of emotional restriction we want to be mindful of. So I always say, when you are conscious, when you are aware of the energy you're moving through, you definitely can move through these energies consciously and effectively. So I hope this helps you all move through this energy. Thank you so much for joining me. And now let's get into all 12 rising signs. Aries, you have this full moon happening in your 12th house, and the 12th house represents spirituality, isolation, self-undoing, self-sabotaging, subconscious beliefs, patterns, and habits. The 12th house can also represent places that are hidden or things that are hidden, like hospitals, asylums, retreat centers, jails, but also just wanting to come away from the world. This can really trigger an energy, or you may be feeling this energy of not really wanting to socialize, wanting to spend some alone time, which would be great for really spending alone time and doing some intuitive work, doing some spiritual work. Now, this full moon is ruled by Jupiter, and you currently have Jupiter in your second house of money, finances, material possessions. So you may find that at this time something is brought up or triggered with your money and your finances. So definitely something that you want to be mindful of and aware of. Now, because this full moon is forming a conjunction to Saturn, this can bring on some restrictive energy that you just want to be mindful of, especially when it has to do with, more of that wanting to be alone, more of that really not wanting to socialize. I highly recommend, journaling, sitting with the energy, doing some intuitive work, and just taking care of your energy at this time. Being kind to yourself. If you're not feeling like socializing, create those healthy boundaries, and we don't want to be doing any unhealthy isolation, but it's okay to spend some alone time, regather your thoughts, balance out your energy. And if that is really what you are being pulled to do at this time, then absolutely do so. Taurus, you have this full moon happening in your 11th house, and the 11th house represents social groups, friendships, online connections, also social media, online businesses. And so this is a time where this full moon is lighting all of that up for you, where you may be wanting to focus more on your friendships, on your social groups, on your online connections. Now, because this full moon is forming a conjunction to Saturn, that can really bring a stop or a halt to something, or can bring up some type of restriction, something coming up with friendships or social groups or online connections. Maybe watch your online communication at this time. Something can be brought up with that. Now, Jupiter is the dispositor of this full moon, and you currently have Jupiter in your first house. So there can be something here where you are feeling like you're not able to express yourself in some way, where you're wanting to express yourself, but you're feeling restricted. That can have to do with a lot of the retrograde energy. But I highly recommend taking care of your energy at this time, doing some grounding, drinking lots of water, journaling, because of the energy that we're all currently moving through and feeling differently. This is a time where we don't want to be pushing anything that is not naturally moving in the direction we're moving in, if that makes sense, especially for you when it has to do with friendships and social groups and online connections. This is a time where you don't want to be pushing anything you're feeling resistance from. Now, this is a great time to focus on your hopes and your dreams and your goals. That is all energy of the 11th house, which you have supportive energy to do that. So this is a great time to really sit with your energy, focus on your intuition or use your intuition. I'm sorry, it's Mercury retrograde, so I'm having a hard time speaking. And journal, write down whatever is coming to you at this time. It can definitely be beneficial for you, Taurus. Gemini, you have this full moon happening in your 10th house, and the 10th house represents your career, your public reputation, the legacy you leave behind after your working years. And so with this full moon can really be highlighting those themes and topics for you, where maybe you are focusing more on your career. Now, because this full moon is forming a conjunction to Saturn, there's a lot of restrictive energy where you're not able to move forward, which because of the retrograde energy, I don't suggest moving forward with much. This is really a time to just sit with whatever is showing up for you, especially as far as your career goes. You don't want to be really implementing anything new with your career if it's not something you've already started, if that makes sense. Now, Jupiter also rules your 12th house. And Jupiter is the ruler of this full moon. So this is a time where you can just be feeling like you want to have some alone time. You want to take care of your energy. You want to focus on your spiritual practice, do some intuitive work, which I do highly recommend at this time. And so with this full moon, Pisces, you may just find that there is something coming up as far as your work and your home life, your home and family that's not balanced, that's requiring your attention, that you're having to bring your awareness to, that you're possibly feeling restricted because there is a lot of restricted energy, but there's something here you may need to release and let go of. And I'm feeling like it's more so at work. There's something at work or with your career that you may have to just move through. There can be boundary issues within the career that you're needing to kind of address at this time. Cancer, you have this full moon happening in the 9th house. And so the 9th house represents higher education, higher knowledge, long distance travel, philosophy, religion. And so this can be a time where you are focusing on going back to school, possibly taking a new course, because it is September. We are coming into September. So this full moon can be highlighting all of that for you. Now, those themes and topics can be prominent, but because this full moon is forming a conjunction to Saturn, there may be restriction. There may be something taking a little bit longer with the process, if that's something that you are doing, where if you are enrolling in a new course or thinking about going back to school, there can be some type of restriction there. Now, if you're thinking about traveling, this may not be a great time because we have a lot of planets retrograde. And so we really are in a time where we're just sitting with the energy, we are reflecting, we are journaling, we are really taking care of our energy. Now, because you are feeling this energy a little bit more positively than the other signs, this is great for intuitive work. This is a time where you can be feeling maybe overly emotional. Emotions can be heightened at that time. At this time, you may be even feeling a little bit emotionally restricted, where you're feeling like you're not able to express yourself. Now, Jupiter also rules your 11th house, and Jupiter is the ruler of this full moon. And so there can be something coming up with friends or friendships or online connections that you need to be aware of. Leo, you have this full moon happening in the eighth house. The eighth house rules your partner's finance, can represent taxes, inheritance, money coming in from outside resources, loans. And so you may find that this is a time where you are focusing more on those themes and topics. Now, because this full moon is forming a conjunction to Saturn, there may be something coming up that there's some restricted energy here, restrictive energy, where something may be taking a lot longer than you expected. There can be something coming up with your partner's finances that was unexpected or that is taking a little bit longer. There's definitely something coming to your awareness at this time when it has to do with money coming in from outside resources. This can even be client work because that is money coming in from outside resources if you have clients. But there is something coming up that you do have to move through. Now, because this full moon is ruled by Jupiter, you also have Jupiter in the ninth house of Jupiter in the 10th house of career, public reputation. There may be something too that's activated within your career. So like I said, the client work, you may find there's something coming up that's requiring your attention that you're needing to work through, that you're needing to balance out when it has to do with your career and money coming in from outside resources. Virgo, you have this full moon in Pisces happening in your seventh house, and the seventh house represents your close personal connections, your relationships, your business partnerships. And so this full moon can really be highlighting those themes and topics for you. Now, because this full moon is forming a conjunction to Saturn, there may be something coming to your attention, coming to the forefront that you're needing to move through with your relationships and with your close personal connections that you do just want to be mindful of. There can be something here where there's a need to release and let go of something. Now, Gemini is the ruler of this full moon, and you currently have Gemini in your ninth house of higher education, higher knowledge, long distance travel, philosophy. So those themes and topics can also be activated as well. This can be a time where maybe you are diving into a new course, wanting to start a new course, wanting to learn something new. All in all, Virgo, this is a decent energy. We really just want to be mindful. I mean, I know you're going through it because we have Mercury retrograde right now, and Mercury is your chart ruler. This is really a time for reflection, doing all those RE words, reflecting. This is a time to ground, reevaluate. This can be a time of feeling very stressful, very anxious. And so getting your feet on the earth can help with that, drinking a lot of water, sitting with the energy and journaling, and not being too hard on yourself for things that moving in the direction that maybe you're wanting them to move in, or holding on to a specific outcome or journey. This is a time that we just need to balance the energy out and be open. Libra, you have this full moon happening in your sixth house of routine, of your health, of work, of nutrition. And so not only are we in Virgo season where we are starting to get back into our new routines or implement new routines, but this is happening in your sixth house of routines. And so you may be really focusing on starting new routines, implementing new routines. Now, what I want you to be mindful of is that we do have 6 planets retrograde. And so we don't want to be implementing much as far as launching new projects, anything like that. This is a good time to start new routines, but it can just be difficult sticking to them. We really have to dedicate ourselves and have that kind of self-discipline at this time, which we're all feeling. Now, Jupiter is the ruler of this full moon, and you currently have Jupiter in your 7th house of your partner's finances, money coming in from outside resources, taxes, inheritance. So there can be something activated too at this time around your partner's finances or around money coming in from outside resources that you do just want to be mindful of. Now, this full moon is also forming a conjunction to Saturn, bringing on some type of restriction when it has to do with these themes and topics that we do just want to be mindful of, whether it has to do with our commitments or responsibilities or even personal boundaries. This is an energy that we want to work with consciously and just have the awareness and pay attention to what is showing up at this time so you are able to move through this energy consciously and effectively. Scorpio, you have this full moon happening in the fifth house, and the fifth house is the house of romance and pleasure and play and hobbies and interests and creativity and children. And so those themes and topics can all be prominent at the time of this full moon. Now, this full moon is also forming a conjunction to Saturn, bringing on some type of restriction. So we do want to be mindful of that. This is where possibly you're trying to tap into that creative energy and you're just having some blockages form up. This can also have to do with commitments and responsibilities of getting in the way of having fun, or getting in the way of spending time with your children, or getting in the way of doing what you love, what you want, what you desire, because of that Saturn energy. So just some energy that we do want to be mindful of. We're all moving through it in some way. We are in retrograde city with 6 planets retrograde. So this really is a time to sit with the energy, to reflect, to reevaluate, not really to implement or launch anything at this time. Now, this full moon is ruled by Jupiter, and you currently have Jupiter in your 7th house of relationships, close personal connections. So there can be something activated with that as well, with this energy, where maybe something is coming up with a partner or something is coming up with a business partner that is brought to your attention that you are having to move through. Sagittarius, this full moon is happening in your 4th house of home and family, property, real estate. And so those themes and topics can be front and center at this time of this full moon. Something may even be activated around this time when it has to do with your home and family or property or housing or real estate, something along those lines. Now, this full moon is forming a conjunction to Saturn. So there's a lot of restrictive energy at this time that we want to be mindful of. This is where there can be something coming up with a family member, or you are experiencing something at home that is brought to your awareness that you are having to move through. So again, just something you want to be mindful of. Now, Jupiter is the ruler of this full moon, and you currently have Jupiter in your 6th house of work, health, and daily routine. Now, we are in Virgo season, so we are all naturally getting back to routine, starting new routines, implementing new routines, organizing, getting our house back in order from the summer. So you may be really focused on that, or there may be something along your health, work, and daily routine that is brought to your attention that you are needing to shift and change in some way. Capricorn, you have this full moon happening in your 3rd house, and the 3rd house represents your community, your neighbors, neighborhood, also your siblings, your cousins. The 3rd house also represents communication and reading, speaking, writing, publishing. So those themes and topics may be prevalent at the time of this full moon. This full moon is forming a conjunction to Saturn, and that's bringing on a little bit of this restrictive energy, where possibly you're feeling restricted if you're trying to, restrictive. I'm sorry, it's Mercury retrograde. You're running into difficulty when it comes to communication or speaking, reading, writing, or even with neighbors. This can be a time where something is coming to your awareness within your local community or neighborhood in some way. Something may be brought to your attention that you're having to move through. Now, Jupiter is the ruler of this full moon, and you currently have Jupiter in your 5th house of passion and play and creativity and hobbies and interests and children. And so those themes and topics may also be front and center at the time of this full moon, where something is activated or something is coming up that you are having to move through, possibly with your children, or possibly with your, if you play sports or hobbies or interests, there may be something coming up along those lines, or maybe you're focusing more on your creativity. Aquarius, you have this full moon happening in your 2nd house of money, finances, material possessions. So those themes and topics may be quite prevalent at the time of this full moon. You may be possibly moving through something with your money or material possessions. Something may even show up that you have to figure out or move through when it has to do with your money. Something may come to your awareness because we have this full moon forming a conjunction to Saturn. And so there may be some type of restriction coming up, maybe something taking a little bit longer than you thought, or maybe you were supposed to receive money and it ends up taking longer. There's just something that you do want to be mindful of and aware of when it has to do with your money and finances. Now, this full moon is ruled by Jupiter, and you currently have Jupiter in your 4th house of home and family. So something around your home and family can also be activated at this time, where that you were having to move through, something possibly coming to your awareness with a family member, something you're having to move through within the home. So just something that you want to be, just a few things that you want to be mindful of and aware of. Pisces, this is your full moon in your 1st house. And so this full moon can activate anything around you, how you are expressing yourself, your personality, your character, your physical body, how you view this physical reality. This is all really being lit up with this full moon. You can be wanting to shift and change your character in some way, or your appearance in some way, or decide that you want to approach the world in a new way. Now, this full moon is forming a conjunction to Saturn, which you currently have Saturn in your 1st house. So you are going through a little bit of a redirecting of energy, possibly some challenging energy. With Saturn, there can be some restriction. Saturn can bring on restriction when it has to do with our responsibilities, our commitments, our boundaries. So where this is a great energy to tap into your creativity, your imagination, and do some spiritual work, you may be met with some resistance when it has to do with your emotions, when it has to do with expressing your emotions. There can be something here that you're also having to move through within your community, with your siblings, your cousins, your neighbors, because Jupiter is the dispositor of this full moon, and you currently have Jupiter in the 3rd house. So 3rd house topics can also be activated, where there's, something coming up possibly with your community, within your neighborhood, with your neighbors, siblings, cousins, or having writer's block or something along those lines, because the 3rd house also represents communication, reading, speaking, and writing.